you're wondering why I'm reviewing more recent titles, it's because I want to play these games, and it just boils down to if I want to play it, I'm going to have to review it.
And I do want to do more reviews of recent games, especially since the 7th generation of consoles is coming to a close and the 8th is just starting. And because I like to produce a review once a week, it either comes down to playing a game for a review or playing a game just to play it. So it's easier to combine the two instead of separating my time between two games. And so far, this is the biggest and most anticipated game I've ever reviewed.
And given the way I review games, I'm fucked.
If you're new to my channel, I'm very critical when it comes to not just video games, but the industry as a whole. I've been gaming since the 3rd generation of consoles, starting with the original Nintendo as my first console in 1989, and I was 4 years old then. Those days are what I consider the renaissance of gaming, and ever since then, I've seen the gaming industry evolve into what it is now. And unfortunately, it's evolved into this money-grubbing industry with EA and Activision leading the charge.
And the reason why I'm so critical is because I'm tired of seeing these overhyped, bland, boring, copy-and-paste jobs that people just seem to gobble up.
One thing that hasn't changed in the industry is that when a game is released, you can see why it was released. Games like Bubsy and Awesome Possum being cheap cash-ins on Sonic's success, or movie and television licensed games like The Walking Dead Survival Instinct. The industry is hoping that gamers will open their wallets and spew money like a toucan with a spastic colon by saying that if you like the original, you'll love their interpretation of it. So thankfully, masterpieces like Bioshock Infinite do come around, and it's a great refresher.
What, did you think I was gonna bash it?
Development for Bioshock Infinite started in 2007, shortly after the release of the first Bioshock game, and was worked in complete secret for about 3 years until it was announced in 2010. And finally went gold in February of 2013 after 2 delays to give the game some extra coats of polish. While it shares the same name as Bioshock, Ken Levine, the designer of the Bioshock series, was not clear if Infinite took place in the same universe as the first 2, and I'll talk about that later. And he has said that Bioshock isn't a location or setting, but actually a concept of 2 ideas. One idea being to explore a fantastic environment, and the other using different tools and abilities to survive.
That's actually a really good idea to keep a game as a concept rather than a solid idea, because then you can take it anywhere you want to go.
If they had kept the series in the underwater city of Rapture, then the series might have gotten stale, and there's only so much you can do. And I think that they already did everything they could do with that setting. First, you had Jack go to the underwater city, do his thing, rescue the little sisters, and kill the bad guy. And then you played as a Big Daddy to pretty much do the same thing in the sequel. Aside from reusing Rapture, the developers thought about using the Renaissance time period. But since Assassin's Creed 2 was taking place in that era, they changed it. And this game went through a lot in development.
And holy crap, was the payoff worth it. This is very impressive, and this will go down as one of the best games for the 7th generation of consoles.
I was playing the new Tomb Raider before I picked this up, and I've gotten so invested in Bioshock Infinite that I haven't been back to Tomb Raider since, and I was really invested in that one. I think it's mainly the world of Bioshock Infinite that has me by the balls. It's so amazing looking. I just couldn't believe the visuals. This is the 1912 steampunk version of the city in Mirror's Edge. When I first saw Columbia in-game, the pictures and videos used to promote the game did not do it justice. Everything looks amazing, and it only gets better from the pristine city streets to the gritty underbelly of the city. I do like the sound, as they use really old music that plays on the radios for ambience, and it makes you feel like you're in the early 1900s, which adds to the atmosphere. And speaking of, I have no hard time believing that this takes place in 1912. The way the characters are dressed, the way everything is built and designed, it just screams early Americana. Even when it comes to the handyman, if someone were to make a prosthetic body in 1912, that's how I'd see it. It would look huge, painful, and embarrassing.
Everything looks authentic. It's like playing the first Bioshock where everything looks like it was made in the 1950s.
It's that attention to detail that allows you as a gamer to immerse yourself fully into the game world. Like when you read a book, everything around you disappears and your mind's eye takes over, and Bioshock Infinite does that perfectly. The controls are solid. A jumps, B crouches, Y melees, and X interacts with various things. LB will swap between 2 vigors, holding LB will bring up all vigors. LT will use a vigor, and holding LT will charge it. RB swaps between your weapons, and RT fires.
And you can only hold 2 weapons at a time. Thank you very much, Halo.
This is the one thing that I'm really tired of when it comes to modern day shooters, that you can only hold 2 weapons at a time, and I full out blame Halo for this. One of the problems that I have is that you'll find plenty of ammo for the really weak weapons, but hardly find any for the good ones. I like to use the carbine and the hand cannon. They do a good amount of damage at the ranges that you'll be in for most of the game. And there's times you'll run low on the ammo of weapons that you do have, and you'll scramble to find a weapon that you have plenty of ammo for that you can tolerate to finish off the current wave of enemies.
But this is something that's in all modern day shooters. It would just be nice to see Bioshock Infinite break the 2 weapon shackles.
Now, I don't know if this is a glitch or intended. If you swap the weapon you're holding with a weapon on the ground, the one that you dropped will disappear after a few seconds because I've dropped weapons and went back to pick them up and they were gone. So if you need to swap because you run out of ammo, you may be stuck with the one that you picked up for a while until you can swap it with the one that you actually want. I think holding 3 to 4 weapons would be the best solution as it would allow for more strategic fights, especially in this game as there's a lot of cover and places high up enough for you to snipe the hell out of your enemies. But it's not as simple to always carry a certain weapon, especially when there's only certain times it'll be needed or really useful.
And because of the 2-weapon limit, there's times where you're going to have to pull a solo.
Yes, Elizabeth does help you by providing health, ammo, and salts, but it's not something you want to rely on, as it seems to be random on how often she'll find something and seems to throw you salts most often, followed by ammo and then health, at least in my experience. The enemies can be divided into 3 groups. Basic, which consists of citizens, cops, and soldiers. Citizens, while hostile, tend to only attack when provoked. There's supports, which are either stationary or floating robots that shoot at you. Then there's heavy hitters, like motorized patriots with Gatling guns, firemen that use the Devil's Kiss vigor. Then there's the handyman, which are this game's version of Big Daddies. Not only are they faster, but more dangerous and pretty much are boss fights. And these enemies are relentless. They will not stop attacking until you're dead.
And the AI makes a difference here. It really feels like they're intelligent people.
A lot of the smarter enemies will hide and take cover or will come up from the side and melee you when they're not in your field of vision. The AI makes the game a really good challenge, and there's enemies like the Boys of Silence that you can't kill and have to stay out of their line of sight, and sentry robots that will fire almost non-stop at you. While combat offers a nice challenge, there's no real consequence for dying. You're revived at a safe spot, dead enemies are dead, enemies still alive get a portion of their health back, although it's not much, and you get a good portion of your health back. You get some ammo given back to you, and you lose a little bit of money.
So while combat can be a really good challenge, there's times where it just comes off as really easy, and I don't play first-person shooters that much, and I don't think I'm a savant when it comes to this genre.
The story is done really well. If you want a story with conspiracy, time travel, and alternate dimensions that's done right, this is the game for you. You play as Booker DeWitt, a former soldier and former Pinkerton agent, a man racked with guilt from what he did during the Battle of Wounded Knee. He's told to bring a girl to New York to wipe away his gambling debts. So he goes to Columbia, which is governed by Zachary Hale Comstock,
who is a nod to the real-life Anthony Comstock, who was a moral crusader and created the Comstock Laws. Pretty much, he was the Jack Thompson of his time.
Comstock is a self-proclaimed prophet and the main antagonist who founded Columbia, and it's hinted that he was also a politician who tried to sway the United States government to conform to his way of thinking as he claimed that he was able to see into the future. He plans to use his daughter Elizabeth to continue his plans, which is to use Columbia, which is actually a massive warship, to declare war on America. There's also a revolutionary force called the Vox Populi, trying to overthrow the current government and try to bring equal rights for all citizens, as the city has been divided into the rich whites versus the poor whites and black slaves.
It's full-out class warfare.
As Booker travels with Elizabeth, you learn that she can open tears, and where these tears lead to is not really addressed at that moment. But when you start dimension hopping, you learn that these different dimensions are alternate realities based on choices that are made. In other words, it's hypertime, where everything is true and each reality that happens is branched off as a result of a choice. In one reality, Booker gave the Vox Populi their weapons and died in the process and is seen as a martyr. That universe's leader, seeing Booker alive, orders him to be killed, otherwise their cause may be for nothing. In another alternate reality, Booker does not save Elizabeth from being kidnapped, and she carries out Comstock's plan for war on America.
Imagine there being 2 stores sitting next to each other. You walk into one, buy a lottery ticket, but you don't win the jackpot. However, there's an alternate reality where you walked into the other store, bought a lottery ticket, and won the jackpot.
So when Levine was asked if Rapture existed in the same universe as Bioshock Infinite, he really didn't answer, because it's a yes or no answer. In one reality, there's a Columbia and a Rapture. There's another where there's Columbia but no Rapture, then there's no Columbia but a Rapture, and finally there's another where neither exist. It's then revealed that Booker is not from the universe Columbia exists in. Prior to the events of the game, Rosalinda Latouche met her counterpart from Booker's dimension, Robert Latouche. After experimenting in quantum physics and opening tears to other realities, Comstock sees these tears as what will happen instead of what may happen. And due to overusing the tears, he ages rapidly, becomes sterile, gets cancer, and becomes very delusional.
It's hinted that all the technology in Columbia is from opening tears into Rapture, and I really like that they reference the previous Bioshock games.
So Comstock orders the Latouches to get him his own child from another dimension, and in the big reveal, Comstock is Booker and Elizabeth is Booker's daughter, Anna DeWitt. The Booker you play as was offered to have his debts wiped in exchange for his daughter. He then regretted the choice and went back to get her, but the tear closed on Anna's finger, causing her finger to be severed, and because Anna exists in 2 dimensions at once, she can open tears. Comstock's wife resented Elizabeth. Thinking that he had an affair with Rosalinda Latouche and was going to go public with the information, Comstock had his wife killed, blamed his maid who becomes the leader of the Vox Populi because of the false accusation. Comstock orders the Latouches killed, but because they were using their terror machine at the time, it caused them to exist across all dimensions and all timelines.
Man, this story's awesome.
Robert Latouche sees how bad Elizabeth is treated, and sees what she'll do in the future due to Comstock's conditioning, so he convinces Rosalind, who really didn't care, to enlist Booker to rescue Elizabeth and return her to her proper dimension. So the memories that Booker has in the beginning of the game are due to him being pulled through a tear and therefore false. And even though they defeated Comstock, he still exists in other dimensions, and there's only one way to truly stop him, is to kill him where he was born. At some point after the Battle of Wounded Knee, Booker felt guilty for what he did and met a priest. He figured that if he was baptized, his transgressions would be gone and he would become a new man.
And this shows that no matter how small of a choice you make, it can have dramatic effects in the future.
However, this is where the timeline splits. In one reality, Booker doesn't take the baptism, feeling that no matter what, he would still be the same person. But in another reality, he takes the baptism and becomes a new man, and in fact, becomes worse than who he was. So other Elizabeths from other dimensions appear. They drown Booker, who willingly allows himself to be killed at the site where Comstock was created so that Comstock will never exist. And then the Elizabeths disappear as the screen goes black except for the last one, although it's assumed that she disappears as well. And in the final scene, Booker finds himself in his apartment, calls out for Anna and opens the door to her room, and the screen goes black. So we can assume that this is a different Booker that probably didn't go to the Battle of Wounded Knee.
But the story is awesome, and it makes you wonder if things happen out of choice or because of destiny. While the characters say that everything happens because of a choice that you make, there's an underlying tone that is actually destiny.
In the beginning of the game, when you first see the Latouches in Columbia and flip the coin, it shows that the result is heads, 123 times. Meaning that the Booker that you play as is the 123rd Booker that the Latouches enlisted to save Elizabeth, and no matter how many Bookers flip the coin that any Booker flips is destined to result in heads. However, through Elizabeth's choice to escape with Booker, she avoids the fate of carrying out Comstock's plan to wage war on America.
I think the best interpretation you can walk away with this is that there is destiny, but it can be influenced by choice.
The perfect example is in every action that Comstock has taken. Comstock did not have to reinvent himself as a different person. He did not have to use the tear machine. He did not have to build Columbia. He did not have to have his wife killed, and so on and so forth. Because of the choices he made, he shaped his own destiny to have the unfortunate end of his alternate self killing him. Irrational Games did an amazing job paying attention to all the little details of the story to make sure that it's solid enough with no plot holes, at least none that I found. If Sonic 2006 is the worst story with alternate timelines, then Bioshock Infinite has the best story when dealing with the same subject.
The game is a work of art, and I'm not even done talking about it yet.
The characters are very believable, especially Booker and Elizabeth. When Booker interacts with other characters, he feels like a real person, and Elizabeth also feels real. But at the same time, she feels like a Disney princess. She even looks like one, especially Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and they kind of made that reference with her in Songbird. While Comstock is a racist, religious fanatic, he doesn't come off as your ordinary villain. While most villains do what they do for money or power because they want it or because they're crazy and psychotic and want to see the world burn, Comstock is different because he believes what he's doing is the right thing.
And there's other characters with their own fleshed out personalities, and they make the world come alive and feel real.
The game does borrow from its predecessors in a few ways, like how Columbia is a floating city in the sky as opposed to Rapture being underwater. Vigors take the place of plasmids and serve the same purpose. I think the possession vigor is the most fun, as it helps reduce the enemy count as possessed people will suicide after realizing what they did. Murder of Crows and Shock Jockey are probably the ones that you'll be using for most of the game. They both do a good deal of damage and stun your enemies, making combat pretty easy.
You can charge up your vigors to set up traps, but I really haven't seen much use for that.
I've set maybe 1 or 2 traps during my playthrough, mainly because I didn't want to waste any vigor that I may need. But there are ways to increase your health, vigor, and shield by finding bottles that flash red, blue, and yellow. These bottles are incredibly easy to find. They're usually hidden, and I use that word very loosely, in a room in the area that you're in, and all you need to do is have Elizabeth pick a lock. Additionally, this game is a pirate's paradise. You can steal as much as you want, almost in front of people, and no one cares. You can possess machines so that they belch money at you as well, which is good because there's a lot of upgrades that cost a lot of money.
And the Skyrail adds to that swashbuckling pirate feel. It's so much fun, but it does make combat a little tricky.
I think if you're playing this on a PC, then fighting on the Skyrail would be a lot easier because you're using a mouse to aim instead of the analog stick. Although I am one of those people that prefers to play a first-person shooter with a mouse and keyboard. When I'm using a controller, I find it easier to disengage from the Skyrail to take down enemies than actually trying to aim and shoot at them, which does make it more fun, but it can put you in danger as there may be more enemies than you can see.
Which brings me to a final couple couple of nitpicks, nothing bad, but just a few things I think could have been improved on.
Your field of vision feels very narrow, almost like Booker has a pair of blinders on. There's almost no peripheral vision, so your enemies are at an advantage if they flank you from the side. Another thing that I have a little issue is when it comes to controls is finding the perfect sensitivity for looking around and aiming. I would also like to have seen more stealth options in the game, like a silencer or something, because there's a lot of opportunities to take down your enemies without alerting others. If you attack one, it doesn't matter if you kill them in one shot, all the enemies in the vicinity are alerted and know exactly where you are. And I would have liked to seen a lot more ammo variety for the good weapons instead of the crappy ones.
I know it's early to call this, but I see Bioshock Infinite being on people's top 10 lists for games made in 2013.
So far, the only competition Bioshock Infinite has for the number 1 spot is Tomb Raider, Injustice Gods Among Us, and Ni no Kuni. While I looked ahead at games that were coming out this year that were not ports or re-releases, any upcoming game can be delayed to 2014. It doesn't look like Bioshock Infinite will have much competition. Not many games come along with a story that makes you think and feel for the characters, or make you question about how your life could have played out if you made different decisions, and really makes you look at yourself introspectively, or makes you want to talk about every little aspect of the world that it takes place in because it's so awesome.
I love Bioshock Infinite. It's as close as a game can get to perfection and truly deserves all the hype that it's getting. At least at this point in time.